Hello. Okay. My name's Oliver Davies. I'm going to talk about modern Drupal development with Composer. I work for a company called Activation. I do mostly stuff with a framework that starts with D and ends in L, as I just said earlier. Lots of things in between. Some of the old ways, I say old, they're still perfectly valid sort of ways to go about building Drupal applications. You can go to Drupal.org, which is where we maintain all our code. Download an archive, so a zip file or a tarball of the code, extract it, and have that as your code base. We have a tool called Drush, which is the Drupal shell, similar to sort of Symfony console, the Laravel artisan commands. That comes with commands like drushdl that download the project, essentially do the same things as downloading the archive, but does it all manually, automatically for you. Or we have a tool called drushmake, which uses make files to generate your site by defining versions and things in actual files. Similar-ish to the way the Composer does it, but I think Composer has some advantages based over drushmake. So Composer is the way I've gone about building all my recent projects and all my side projects. There was, or there still is, a website called the Drupal Packagist. So it's an actual implementation of the Packagist on a subdomain, an unofficial Packagist, I guess. That's sort of been deprecated in terms of native endpoints on Drupal.org, which are currently in a beta state. So I use it to maintain Drupal core and to maintain all my contrib dependencies, so any additional modules that I need to install into my Drupal site all come through down with Composer. And these work for both Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. So Drupal 8 is our sort of newest release, which actually uses Composer natively to do all this dependency management. Drupal 7 is our legacy version, which doesn't use Composer generally, but I'll come back to that in a minute. Why have I chosen to go down this route? So I previously did the download the archive. I previously did the drushmake version. Getting off the island is a big thing for me. It's been a big thing in the Drupal community for the last few years with the adoption of third-party Symfony components, things like tools like PHP Unit, some of the modern standard PHP tools that haven't really been used within the Drupal ecosystem have now started to get more traction and more usage within the Drupal community. Better versioning support, so using the drushmake files, you have to specify a specific version of a module or of core, which Composer gives us the ability to use sort of semantic versioning and decide I want to use anything from version 1.1 something. So it gives us a bit more loosely coupled versioning. Easier updates, so if you go down the archive route, you have everything in one directory, and to update core, for example, you could download the archive again, delete certain directories from your initial installation, keep certain files if you've changed your robots file or your htaccess file or things within your sites directory particularly you have to keep. So it's a very manual, potentially error-prone process. Obviously, using something like Composer means we can just change the number in a file and rebuild. So it takes a lot of the manual steps away. And automatic dependency management is a big thing, which is the thing that drushmake I think that it doesn't do. So if you have a module that depends on another module or depends on a PHP library, the Composer way will download everything for you rather than needing to specifically include every exact version. So within my PHP, within my Drupal application, I can run the Composer config command to add a new repository, call it Drupal. It's a Composer type, and it's going to use, in this case, the packages.drupal.org/8 if it's a Drupal 8 project. And that gives us something, this gives us exactly this, to be fair, within my composer.json file. The other thing we tend to use, or I tend to use a lot, is custom directories. So again, with the composer.json file, we can add this within the extra section using the Composer installer, I believe it's plugin. And I can use custom types, so Drupal module or Drupal profile, Drupal theme. So rather than everything going into a vendor directory, In this case, these things would go into modules / contrib / the name of the project. Likewise for profiles and likewise for themes. So by adding the custom repository, we can use composer require. They all come within the Drupal namespace, then the machine name of the module. So in this case, I'm going to install a module called PathAuto, which automatically generates paths to nodes and other things. In this case, this is a Drupal 8, so it's only in a pre-release. I've specifically included the 1.0 release rather than getting something from dev. And you can see in this case, it's actually downloaded 3 different modules. So PathAuto actually relies on 2 modules called Token and one called CTools, and both of those have been downloaded automatically, hence the dependency management thing that I mentioned earlier on. So whereas previous, using either the drush download commands or using drush make, I'd have had to have included all 3 of these things specifically, whereas Composer, being a dependency manager, can figure out for me which modules rely on which other modules. Likewise, using the address module as an example, that requires a particular PHP library the commerce guys have written called addressing, and by requiring the module, it actually downloads the library in addition to downloading the module, rather than needing to do that separately. There is a composer template on GitHub for, say, Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. It uses a more Symfony type file structure, so all of your the site goes into a web directory that you can point your virtual host to. It uses the custom directories, as I mentioned before, to put into the contrib directories. Manages directories and file permissions, so you normally have to use a files directory for putting user uploaded assets in. It uses a project called Drupal Scaffold to create those for you automatically, and it will include the drush tool and also the Drupal console tool for you automatically. We can download this using the Composer create project command, which is much easier. So it's just Drupal Composer, Drupal project, give it a directory name, and that will download the whole setup for you. I have a demo. It's just going too fast. There we go. So in this case, I can use Composer create project, put it into a directory called PHP Southwest. It will download all of the different dependencies, all the Symfony parts, all the Zen framework parts. It pulls in Doctrine, some various Drupal specific components as well. It's chopped off the bottom part of my video. Generates the autoload files. I'm just going to change into that directory. And then we can require the PathAuto module, I believe. You can see that downloading. So you'll see CTools and CToken come along with this as well. And then we can also download a theme called, using the Omega theme in this example. I'm sure I can type faster than this normally. Yeah, so because I haven't specified a particular version, it's pulling the latest dev release for this one, because I think, again, it's pre-stable for Drupal 8 particularly. Yeah, and I'm going to open up Sublime. This is the file structure that you get. It puts my modules into contrib, the 3 contrib modules right there. And also the themes go into the themes contrib module. So no manual downloading, all downloaded via Composer. So these are the 2 main resources, I guess. There's one page on Drupal.org that explains how to use this type of setup, and then the link to the particular Composer template that I mentioned previously. This is a shortened version of a talk I'm giving next week at the Drupal Bristol group. So if you've got any questions now, or feel free to come along next week and see the full version.
We felt the kind of wider Drupal community have kind of picked up some of the newer, more modern PHP tools. I mean, we've had to deal with moving from Magento 1 to 2, which for years you haven't had to know about Composer, PHP Unit, all the dependency injection interfaces, all these sort of things. So depending on the person and their own kind of research, it very much depends on how well they pick up the new version. How have you experienced that with particularly like third-party modules and things like that?
Yeah, I think we've seen pretty much the same thing. There's definitely some people who've primarily, well, I was the same, so I started off with Drupal 6 or Drupal 7, which didn't use any of this stuff. It's all functional program, functional programming. There's no object orientation there at all. Whereas with Drupal 8 particularly, it's been out for about a year. There's a big push to move towards sort of standards like object-oriented code, PSR standards, Composer, and now PHP unit and this type of thing. I think there's definitely some lag time there. So we're seeing sort of Drupal modules are now still sort of catching up to core in some respects. There is the flip side of that, as I'm seeing projects like Drupal Commerce project particularly now say we can only download this via Composer, particularly because they've taken a very libraries first based approach. So rather than saying we're going to write, as they did previously, all of our custom business logic within the Drupal module itself, for the Drupal 8 versions, they've written generic sort of PHP libraries that aren't framework specific or even Drupal specific, released them. They've been used within Magento, within other Foxycart, other e-commerce projects, and then made the modules rely on the libraries. So I think that's why they've gone down this approach of things like the address module they've recommended only can install via Composer. So I think there still is such a big learning curve for people who haven't been exposed to that. But whereas I'm seeing the benefits of now being able, so I've spent maybe the last 12 months of my own time sort of learning Symfony and Laravel to sort of get up to speed with some of these things. And it's great now to be able to reapply some of the knowledge I've learned outside of Drupal back into it. So yeah, I think we're getting there, I think. But
Thanks very much.